I'm going to
Good.
go ahead and start recording now just because I don't know that it records people's chats until I do that. So I want to make
Oh,
sure to capture everyone that's typing their names in right now.
great. Okay, that sounds great. Good afternoon, everybody. It looks like many folks are well versed at putting in your name and affiliation into the chats. Such good students on this snowy afternoon. If you can try to remember to set your to button to everyone, it for some reason defaults to panelists, which means we can see you. And if that's what you prefer, that's fine. But if you do everyone, then everyone can see it. So we will get started in just a second. Just let us we're just going to do some logistics. Adam, it says I cannot share my screen.
Let me see what's going on.
Or do you want me to share the slides with you and you do the screen?
Well, it should let you. Let me see what I can do.
Thanks. So while we're working out the logistics, everybody, if you don't mind putting in your name and your affiliation, so then we can just see who we're connecting with and getting the word out to and where else we might need to continue engagement and outreach, that would be greatly appreciated. And we'll get started in a second. And for those of you who might have the soccer game on in the background, AAA and others, don't tell us what the score is just yet.
It's not for some reason letting me.
Okay, can I share? Should I just share with you and then you can share?
Yeah, do you want to just send me the presentation and I can?
I just added you.
There you go.
And just sent you the link in GChat, so we're doubly covered.
Okay. I will get that up here in a second.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us. Looks like we have a good group. For those of you who have joined, we are just getting the presentation.
I think I got it working for you. One sec.
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Okay, we're just getting the presentation coordinated and then we'll get started.
Are you able to present now?
See. Yes,
Cool.
I can now share my screen. Thank you. I'm assuming folks can see that okay. What's interesting is now I can't see things like the chat. So,
I will let you know if anyone puts anything in there that's pertinent.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so I think we'll get started. And we are recording this for the many partners and stakeholders who are unable to attend, as many have busy schedules, but are interested in this information. So we will be posting this recording on our website after the fact, along with a copy of the slides, so that you can revisit it or share it with others. But we just wanted that disclaimer that we will be recording. Keeping that in mind, if folks don't mind, if you can please add your name and affiliation into the chats, ideally have it set to everyone, not just panelists, but of course do what you prefer. So good afternoon. This is the informational webinar on the Colorado Division of Housing's Transformational Grant Programs Notice of Funding Availabilities. We are very excited to share with you 2 new grant program application processes that we released on November 22nd. And this is going to probably be a quick hour and a half, we imagine, as there is a lot of information to share. And I'm sure you have a lot of wonderful and thoughtful questions. I am Kristen Toombs. I am the director of our Office of Homeless Initiatives within the Division of Housing. And I'm here with my colleague, Andrew Paredes. Andrew, I don't know if you want to do a quick hello.
Good afternoon, everybody. Andrew Paredes. I am the Director of Housing Finance and Sustainability here at the Division of Housing.
Thank you, Andrew. Andrew and I are going to tag team today. We are going to set some pauses at certain times where we can answer your questions. So feel free to raise your hand. We have our colleagues, Adam and Chelsea, who have been kind enough to help us with that. Of course, if you prefer to put something in chat instead, please again, do it to everyone ideally, and we will do our best to monitor the chat as well. So again, in addition to, here's the agenda for our time together this afternoon. So a little bit more about the logistics. You are on mute just to help with bandwidth. You can, and we have a lot of folks on this call, which is very exciting. Please do put your name, affiliation. Please do raise your hand as you have questions. We highly recommend that you have the actual NOFA documents from the link up and can reference that. A lot of what we are referencing is highlighting certain parts of the notice of funding availabilities. There are 2 documents and they are on our website. We will put that link in shortly. But we definitely recommend that you revisit that link routinely, as we will probably need to update with clarification or more guidance and information to help you with your application process. So this is to help support that. This is not in replacement of those NOFA documents. So we will go over how those fit with, it's a busy year for us, very exciting, because there's a lot of great need in Colorado around housing. So we will share with you about how this fits with all the other funding opportunities we have, so you have a sense for what to apply for, when, and how this all fits together. Then we'll dig into the 2 transformational grant programs. Again, there are 2, and they're related to each other. Think of them as building blocks potentially for certain programs, or you might just apply to one. And we'll walk through that. And we have some examples to show you that can share, give you some sense for what that order of operations will look like. And of course, again, we want to make sure that we leave time for questions. We've created some FAQs, frequently asked questions, that we've already been getting to help, but we want to make sure we leave time for your other additional questions as well. So again, Andrew and I are going to tag team this. Thank you for listening to us and for joining us today. We are extremely excited to partner with you all on this transformational time. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is a very busy time. This, as you can see, is just a sense for all of the different funding opportunities we have coming to the Division of Housing. As you can see, the estimated release date that we did just right before Thanksgiving released 4 opportunities, 2 of which we are talking to you about today, the transformational grant programs. The creation of supportive housing, RFA, request for applications, is webinar will be tomorrow. We encourage you to look at that as well. But you can see here that there are several other funding opportunities in addition to those that we just released that will be coming out soon as well. So again, please stay in touch with us. We do have at the end of this presentation the link to signing up for our emails and the link for where you can stay up to date with the latest applications. Again, this is recorded. We will share these slides, so you do not need to take screenshots or scribble down quickly. We will share this out on our website. And speaking of website, here is the link. So we are, again, going to be talking to you about these 2 related but separate grant programs: the Transformational Affordable Housing, Homeownership, and Workforce Housing Grant Program, and the Transformational Homelessness Response Grant Program. Again, we released those on the 22nd. Today's the 29th of November, where we're having our webinar. And then we have the link. Again, please stay tuned in to this link, visit it frequently, put it as one of your favorites. Okay, so with these 2 grant programs, I think, Andrew, am I going to do this one, or are you taking over? I've got it. Okay. All right. So again, we have the 2 different programs. We've tried to color code it so you can stay visually in check with the different programs. They together are funded by 2 different Colorado state legislature bills, House Bill 22-1304 and House Bill 22-1377. Again, those links are in the NOFA should you wish to read some statute. You are more than welcome. The aim together of these 2 programs is to increase the number of affordable housing units and the availability of housing opportunities across Colorado to ensure that everybody has a safe, stable, and affordable place to live and thrive. This really is that continuum from homelessness all the way through homeownership. For those of you who joined us for our public comments in September and October regarding the drafted guidelines, policies, and procedures that inform these NOFAs, we shared this with you, and we wanted to share it again as a reminder, and for those of you who were not able to join us for that these NOFAs are informed by several different sources and considerations and information. Again, the House bills that I had mentioned. Last year at this time, there was an affordable housing transformational task force made up of elected and administrative state individuals, as well as an expert panel that informed recommendations around affordable housing. Governor Polis and his office also had priorities and recommendations. We have at the Office of Homeless Initiative and with other state agencies, Making Homelessness History in Colorado, a 5-page playbook on best practices and framing around homelessness. And of course, we had the statewide summer engagement that we got to see many of you in person, which was lovely. And so you gave us a lot of great feedback on that has helped inform this as well. Same with the public comments we got to the drafted guidelines. And let's not forget that these funds did come from a federal act, the American Rescue Plan Act. And so we need to make sure that we are in line with the regulations regarding those funds. So as you can see, we've taken all of your input, best practices, needs, data, as well as other input from experts, stakeholders, and leaders, and the regulations, state and federal, to pull together these two funding opportunities. So why did the state legislature dedicate these funds to homelessness and affordable housing? We know that these were exacerbated by the pandemic. Colorado needs over 121,000 affordable housing units. Nearly half of us spend more than 30% of our income on housing. And we know that the lack of affordable housing directly correlates with the increase in homelessness. And now I will turn it over to Andrew.
Thanks, Kristen. As Kristen said again, these two NOFAs or programs are inspired by and funded by two House bills from 2022, House Bills 1304 and 1377. They allow for a combined $243 million that are available to be accessed through these two NOFAs. This is where we, as staff, are going to do our best now to stop referring to them by their House bill numbers and rather by the actual NOFA, the Transformational Affordable Housing, Homeownership, and Workforce Housing Grant Program. Think about this as development funding across the entire housing spectrum, everything from shelter to homeownership. And then secondly, the Transformational Homelessness Response Grant Program. Think of this as non-development funding, across the spectrum. Things more in the lines of services, operational funding, and programs. So one primarily deals with acquisition and development. Think of acquiring and building new things. And a second one deals primarily with programs and support, again, primarily for those affected with or at risk of homelessness. So I will go over the Affordable Housing, Homeownership, and Workforce Grant Program. So I won't spend too much time reading all of this, as you all can see it on the published NOFA. But of note, we have our minimum and maximum project awards, application dates. Something that has changed since the initial guidelines is that we will be asking for a letter of interest or letter of intent approximately 20 or 21 days prior to an applicant's making of an application. So the steps will be that an applicant will send their LOI into the Division of Housing. Our Housing Development Program Manager will receive your letters of intent. We'll distribute them to our housing development staff, who will then be able to connect with the applicant, go over the LOI kind of at a high level, and then open up the application portal so that the applicant can go online, fill out the application, and upload the required documents. So for this first month, LOIs will be due by December 10th. And then those that have submitted their LOIs by December 10th are then eligible to apply as a, by January 1st. And then the same concept rolls into the next month. Eligible applicants are only local governments and a variety of flavors of local government, as you can see here, as well as community partners or nonprofits. So a for-profit corporation is not an eligible applicant for either of these grant programs. And then you can see here a list of the eligible activities. So those kind of are the must-haves. Those activities for the Transformational Affordable Housing, Homeownership, and Workforce Grant Program. Those are the eligible activities. As applications are reviewed, they will be reviewed to see how many of the priority areas are hit in terms of the project or programs, plan, and application. Next, please. A couple of highlights. We got a lot of questions around some of these highlighted areas, so wanted to circle back. You can see that there are accessibility requirements for new construction and substantial rehabilitation, and a definition of substantial rehabilitation is included in the NOFA. For structures containing 5 or more units, so structures containing 1 to 4 units, this does not apply to. But 5 or more units of new construction or substantial rehab, at least 10% of the units, minimum of 2, must be made handicap accessible or adaptable. And an additional 4% of the units, or minimum of 2, must be made accessible to persons with hearing or vision impairments. Your housing development staff will be able to talk you through this. But again, this is the accessibility requirement. As you can see, it applies to new construction and substantial rehabilitation of structures containing 5 or more units. Mixed use, again, mixed use is eligible, provided that at least 50% of the project hits the, provides the affordable primary residence housing as kind of defined by the geographic designations as well as the market need. And then leveraged funds. For this Transformational Affordable Housing, Homeownership, and Workforce Grant Program, a minimum of 25% of the project or program costs must be sourced from a third party. That could be cash contribution from the nonprofit or the government. That could be a bank loan. That could be a land donation from a neighbor or community member. That could be a grant from a foundation or philanthropic partner. But at least 25% of the project cost must be sourced outside of this grant program. Flip that on its end, that means that this grant program can provide no more than 75% of the project or program's cost. Next, please. Energy efficiency. So you will see in the NOFA, and I won't go read this verbatim, but you will see in the NOFA that energy efficiency requirements do apply. There are 2 filters, essentially, for applications received in the first 6 months of the program through June 30th of 2023. These energy efficiency requirements will apply to all multifamily rental new construction projects of 20 more units in urban or 30 or more in rural resort. So that means that a rehabilitation or an acquisition of a multifamily rental project would not be subject to this. That means that new construction of a 10-unit project would not be subject to this, or projects in designated rural areas would not be subject to these. And this first filter is really meant to apply to projects that are most shovel ready, that are likely further along in their development continuum than others. Therefore, this first filter only applies and not some of the stepped up requirements that we will see next. But I really want to highlight here that these requirements apply to new construction multifamily rental. So that does not mean new construction for sale home ownership. That does not mean acquisition of multifamily rental. Simply new construction multifamily rental projects of certain sizes in certain geographies. Next slide, please. And then the next slide goes into detail as far as energy efficiency requirements for that same subset of categories. So again, just for new construction multifamily rental projects for applications received after July 1, 2023. These requirements are a little bit more robust. They require then a little bit more lead time and planning in order to put in place. That's why kind of the grace period or grandfather period before these new stepped up requirements take effect. We'll go on to the next slide, please. And then, let's see here. I am sorry about this. Kind of reporting requirements. We are going to ask our awardees to report back on the use of the funds. So use of the funds will be reported back to the Division of Housing quarterly. We will have reporting templates for you, but essentially we're going to want to know progress reports on how's it going in terms of construction and spending of the money. When will the project be complete? Who's moving in? What are the race, ethnicity, income, geographic and demographic mixture of the ultimate beneficiaries, as well as some required federal reporting standards. Next, please. So we have about 10 minutes to take some questions. So I think we will do our best, and I'll ask our moderators to take a look at folks who raise their hand, rather try and do some verbal questions first, because negotiating a chat of 250 people might be a little tough. But rest assured, your questions in the chat will be monitored and will be responded to in writing on our FAQ page. So please do put your chat question in there if you have one and we don't get to it verbally.
All right, so first we have Elise Nyerland.
Thanks, Elise.
Hi there, thanks for putting on this webinar. I'm wondering, can you speak to how the Infrastructure and Small Communities Grant Program is, when I was reading the NOFA, I thought it was maybe part of the transformational affordable housing piece, but I'm not sure if that's separate or together. Could you explain that a bit?
It is separate. And so our sister organization, the Division of Local Government, will be rolling out their NOFA for that program at a different time. So that is not part of this transformational affordable housing grant program. More to come.
All right, next up we have the town of Breckenridge.
Hi, my name is Melanie Lees. I was wondering if you can explain a little bit more around the ADA rules. So specifically, the way that it reads, it kind of sounds like if you have units that are attached that are 5 or more, or is it if you were to do like a 50 unit for sale complex, would a certain 10% of those have to be ADA, or is it structures that are actually
It is structures that are 5 or more units attached to each other. So if it were a cluster of duplexes, they would not apply.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, we have Sarah Bott.
Hi, I tried to ask this question offline because I feel a little bit deal specific, and I get the sense Kristen was trying to say that you guys would get to this, but I'm still having like an order of operations question for when, if you have a deal.
Yep. So I'm looking at Kristen's face, Sarah, but we do anticipate this, and I'd rather postpone this because I think it's in our kind of our prepared remarks at the end. So if you don't mind, let us get there. And if we don't, please raise your hand again.
Okay. I feel
Next we have Mike Sandgren. Okay, he dropped off. Now Yvette Searden.
Hello. My question was around adaptive reuse and new and like conversion of underused properties. Does that count as new construction for purposes of the energy efficiency and electrification requirements?
That would not be new construction if it were, an adaptation of an existing structure.
Great, thank you.
And now Amy Saxton.
Yes, I'm wondering, where does a project that is about acquiring mobile home parks fit into this program? Would it be preservation?
Yes, I would. I appreciate the question and the opportunity to put a plug in for our housing development staff when you send in your LOIs. That's exactly kind of the thing that initial pre-application consultation or conversation will unearth. I would think certainly that applying for funds to acquire a mobile home park in order to preserve that already affordable housing in your community for the long term would absolutely fit under that preservation priority area. But we can't anticipate every scenario on this phone call, but that's exactly the kind of thing that the letter of intent and the follow-up conversation are intended to unearth and kind of walk applicants through.
Fantastic, thank you.
And it looks like Craig Cohn is next.
Hi, thank you. Craig Cohn with Vail Health in Vail, Colorado. I think it's page 10. Within the application, there's a pretty exhaustive list of required attachments. It feels to me like hopefully that's a list. I don't want to say that you could pick and choose from, but depending on the type of project that you're potentially putting together, I don't believe all of these would apply. How do we ascertain within this list of roughly 30 items what is necessary relative to an application versus maybe what is outside?
So that's another great question, another great plug for our housing development staff. When you submit your LOI, you'll have an initial consultation with your housing development specialist who will walk through your planned project or program and therefore be able to ascertain which of those attachments would apply.
Perfect.
I think that we have on there that a capital needs assessment or property condition report is one of the required documents, but that wouldn't be required if it was acquisition of land and construction. So that would be what is unearthed in that initial consultation prior to application.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right, next we have Eric Hull. Ooh. Ah. I think you're unmuted, Eric. If you're dialing in, try dialing *6 to unmute.
I think we have time for one more. Eric, if you don't get your question in, you can certainly put it in the chat. You can also email it to Kristen and me so we can make sure it's addressed. If we've got one more, Adam.
Yeah, next we have Chris Everson.
Yeah, hi, Chris Everson, City of Aspen. Can you hear me?
Yep.
We've got a housing infrastructure project teed up to begin in 2024. Can you clarify any deadlines on the use of any funds that may be awarded?
So the only hard and fast deadlines are the need to have the funds obligated by 12/31 of 24 and the funds spent by 12/31 of 26. From there, the underwriting and analysis process will take a look at feasibility and how long it might take to get funds actually, put into place. People moved into units, let's say, if that's the kind of thing that you're doing. But there are no black and white requirements as far as that's concerned. But that sort of shovel readiness and kind of immediacy will be taken into account in the review process. But the only absolute deadlines are those December of 2024 and December of 2026 deadlines.
Thank you so much.
And I'd love to now shift to Kristen so she can go over the Transformational Homelessness Response Grant Program. If I didn't get to your question, please do put it in the chat, and then we can revisit some open Q&A after the Homelessness Response Grant Program portion.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, everybody. I've been trying to read through the chats as Andrew was answering some of the verbal ones, and I think some of the questions folks have will be answered when you read through the NOFA, or hopefully should be. So some of those questions should be able to be answered in there. But again, as Andrew said, we will do our best to get to them for you. So shifting gears, and I think somebody in the chat put, why do these have such similar names? I know. We tried to come up with some fun, creative ones, but here we are, Transformational Homelessness Response Grant Program. Again, the other one was the Transformational Affordable Housing, and it has a couple other there, but I say affordable housing for short. So we got the Affordable Housing Grant Program and the Homelessness Response Grant Program, both we call the Transformational Grant Programs. Now, this one, again, as Andrew said, to remind you, the one that he just shared, the Affordable Housing Grant Program, is where you'll come for the bricks and mortar, right? The homelessness response, is more around the programmatic side. So you will see the minimum project award is the same as the last one at $250,000, and the maximum is $5 million. The other one, the maximum is $10 million. And we had some folks before, when we first posted this in the drafted guidelines, said, but how can we want to be able to get more gap funding? And remember, that would come through the affordable housing one. Okay, so you might go to that one for your gap funding and this one for some programmatic. Again, we're going to show you an example of that, so stay tuned. Exceptions will be considered on a case-by-case basis. They also will vary by eligibility activity, by the activity that is funded, just based on like scale, size, program. We have to look at it from various angles, regulations, etc. So we will show you in a second that there's a wide variety of eligible activities that fall under this grant program, which is really exciting, but also kind of makes it very nuanced. And I know someone had put in the questions about are the parameters around the exceptions or case by case. I think that's part of where Andrew said, you send in your letter of intent and then we set up time to meet with you. That's when you bring up what your exception request is and why. It might be that you don't need $250,000, that you want less, and here's why, that would still be transformational and follow this or something like that. So I would say that the exceptions we have left, we have not prescribed that in great detail because we want to enable that case by case nuance and individuality that we can take into consideration. So the other difference here is that if you remember that the last one Andrew mentioned, because this is, think of the real estate deals, right? Those are rolling monthly due dates with the first due date on January 1st. But then if you're not ready, don't ruin your holidays. It's okay. Come in on February 1st and so on. It'll be monthly. With this one, with the homelessness response, think of this more like a typical grant program application where there are certain due dates, and we're going to compare the batch or the cohort of applications that come in for that due date together and make determinations on which ones get funded. So that is one of the main reasons we have two different application processes, two different grant programs, two different NOFAs. So I really want to highlight that, is that we look at them in different ways, right? Underwriting the financial sustainability and feasibility of a construction development deal is different than a programmatic grant that we give. So that's why you will see that there's a little bit of a difference in the way the applications are structured. There's also a difference in the due dates and how we will review and make award determinations. Where they are similar is that both have the eligible applicants are the local governments and the nonprofits. Okay. Now, this is where we have a shift from the original grant, the original drafted guidelines, policies, and procedures. For folks who remember that, we listed literally what was written in the two statutes. What we've done since then with feedback from others and being informed by the various sources of best practices and terminology, definitions, we noticed that in the statute, the eligible activities kind of fall under programmatic models and activities within those, and then also systems improvement activities. So you will see on the next slide, and I highly recommend you don't try to read the next slide. I just want you to see the visual so you know where to look for it in the homelessness response NOFA, is a table that will show you, okay, what's the program model? What are the activities within that you can apply for? What we will want to see is that you're explaining, I'm applying for services within a shelter program might look a little different than if you're applying for services in a prevention program, for example, like just the staffing structure, what you need, what that budget looks like might look a little different, for example. We, again, have that NOFA table, a table in the NOFA that has it spelled out for you. We also have created an OHI, which is the Office of Homeless Initiatives, homelessness program model comparisons document that we're very excited about. That link is in the NOFA. I think Zach may have just shared it now, so thank you, Zach. And that helps explain when we say transitional housing, what do we mean? When we say bridge housing, what do we mean? It just helps with some of the definitions so that you can look at that. So again, think of it as there are the program models or activities within those program models. Then there's the systems improvement. Those of you who've heard me talk about this funding opportunity, you've heard me say this, I'm going to say it again. Some of these systems improvement activities are not typically funded, most of these. This is an unprecedented time for us to have the opportunity to have improvement in data, coordination, paying for coordination and resource utilization, acceleration. So think of like landlord recruitment. I want to highlight that again, this is the homelessness response grant program. So the ultimate aim of this NOFA is to ultimately reduce the number of people experiencing homelessness in our state. So as you look at these various opportunities, we will be looking for you to show us that impact. And I'm going to go into those threshold requirements and the priorities that will show you how that happens. Okay, this is the table. That looks a little overwhelming on this slide. Take time in the NOFA to look at it. It will really help explain. Again, what we did is looked at the statutes, the two bills, translated what is an activity compared to a program model based on that terminology, and just helped kind of create this funding chart to help you understand how it all fits together. Okay. And then again, we have our homelessness program model comparisons that helps further define what we mean by these different models or activities. Okay. All right. No matter what you're applying for, if you're applying for street outreach or, bridge housing or prevention or data collection, coordination, any of those activities, we are going to be looking at that application for certain threshold requirements, which means if you don't meet these requirements, we will kick it back to you and say, this is not eligible to be reviewed. So you have to be an eligible applicant. So again, local government or nonprofit. One of the eligible uses we just talked about here, right? Asking for something that we actually can fund. The timeline, this was asked before, we need per the American Rescue Plan Act funds to spend by the end of the calendar year 2026. We want to see that this proposal will advance inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. That it's also been informed by individuals with lived experience regarding homelessness. And we will want to make sure that you've incorporated services capacity and experience. And there is a lot in the NOFA around services standards, and same in the program comparison. Just what are we looking for? What do we mean by services? We want to make sure that the individuals being supported in these programs have adequate staffing and services in order to do that safely and effectively. Regarding safety, we have safety and security planning. We want to make sure everybody is safe as they're moving through their housing crisis and into stable housing. So we'll be looking for that. You've got to have outcomes. What are you doing with the money? What's it going to do towards that ultimate aim of reducing homelessness? Us, legislators, feds, you got it. Everybody wants to know what is going to happen with this incredible amount of funds. How do we know it's transformational? How do we know where we need to pivot and adjust and do continuous improvement in our implementation? Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, will be a key part of that so that we can have a comprehensive location where we have that reporting. Commitment to quality, again, ensuring that you'll be following the best practices and standards for whatever that concept is. And no matter what, along the homeless response continuum, whether it is prevention or outreach or housing, that it is housing focused, that ultimately we need to move people out of homelessness or not into homelessness and focus on that stable housing as best as possible. Again, these are spelled out in the NOFA. Once we have those, then we also will we will prioritize. We are anticipating, because there's such a great need, that we will have more applications than we have funding. And so we will want to be looking and comparing applications to one another based on then the following priorities. How transformational is it? We've been asked, what does transformational mean? It fundamentally shifts the homelessness landscape in your community, in your region, in the entire state. We will be looking for you to define for us how you know that will fundamentally shift that, again, for your region, for the state, for your community. We are looking for you to show us the nuance in your community, in your needs, how this will do that. Related to that is, how do you know you're going to have the greatest impact? Not just in the number served, but who it is that you're serving and what is the outcome of that? So what is that greatest impact? And again, there isn't a set number because we know communities, population size, scale vary greatly across our state. Collaboration. So I know there was a question in the chats. Can we come together so we're not competing with each other? Absolutely. We're going to be looking for you on the homelessness side to be collaborating with each other. Are you talking to your regional continuum of care? Are you talking with your public housing authority? If you're an outreach provider, are you talking with emergency response, healthcare providers, housing providers? How are you showing that connectivity? And how does this fit if your local community or region has a homelessness response program or strategy or plan? Are you tapped into that? How does this fit within that? If we're going to have multiple applications coming in from the same region, is there some sort of awareness of each other, coordination with each other? That will be really helpful for us to make sure we're not awarding disparate projects that aren't connected to each other. Part of the opportunity here is for us to get better connected, so those in a housing crisis have less challenge in navigating all of us, and we've created some coordination and efficiency. Sustainability. So as I mentioned, these funds go through 2026. This is a lot of money, unprecedented amount of money. What is going to happen when this money goes away? We don't want to fund Band-Aids, right? This might be a long runway to new funding. What is that plan? This might mean that you can stretch out a current funding source. Just share with us what that looks like. There might be phases. This is one phase, then you're going to move into the next phase. We'll want you to explain that to us. Now, match. And again, don't think 1304, 1377. Think this is the Homelessness Response Grant Program. That at minimum, we want to see a 25% match. If those remember from the drafted guidelines, we had 50% here. We heard you loud and clear. So thank you folks for your input that we are going to do 25% minimum. And then what happens, let's say you have a 1-for-1, then we can increase your scoring on this. And I'll show you the scoring in a second. Proportionately, if for anybody who's over 25. So at minimum, you have to have 25, but the more you have, the more points you'll get for that scoring. Now, with urban municipalities, urban counties, those local governments that are applying, still the 25% minimum, but you won't start getting that increase in scoring until you're at that 50% match. So anybody who's going over that 50%, which means you're going to fund the majority of the project, then you start to get the extra points. So take a look at the NOFA and read through that section. I appreciate that it might feel a little wonky. You might have to read it a few times, but this is the gist of where we've landed with it. Transportation and connectivity. Again, we don't want to think of your program as an island. We know transportation and connection to other programs is really important and challenging. Think time of year, geography, money, ability to move. So how are you thinking about how literally this request is connecting people to other housing or resources that they need? Low barrier to entry. How do we help if you are thinking of doing a low barrier non-congregate shelter? How are you helping invite those who have not felt comfortable going to shelter? How do you invite them in so they can come in safely and start engaging and feel comfortable, for example? And accountability, again, just ensuring that you'll have the ability to track those funds. So again, you've got the threshold requirements here and the program priorities here. Again, I highly recommend that you look through the NOFA and you'll see those, and I'll show you how these connect to the scoring in just a second. Okay, performance outcomes, similar to what Andrew shared, we'll be looking for quarterly reporting. There are some details that will be nuanced based on what your ultimate grant award looks like, the activities, the funding, and the outcomes, et cetera. But we absolutely will want to know how you're using the funds for the program, right? What's the whole program doing, both with our funds and anything that's matching that's going towards it? Who is it serving? What is that beneficiary information? And what's happening to those who are being served? What are the outcomes? There are going to be other state and federal requirements that we will work on and have in there, including CFR 200. And so just stay tuned for those. But overall, it won't be, we will work with you on the nuances, and that will be in the scope of work of the agreement. Okay. Again, these are some of the due dates again. I mentioned the application due dates. The first round is February 15th. The second round is June 15th. Third round is October 15th. Those are the 3 dates for the calendar year of 2023. February 15, June 15, October 15. We then have a 4th date in 2024 of February 15. What we'd really like to see, similar to what Andrew shared on the other one, is the month before you intend to apply, please send us an LOI, a letter of intent. So Jan 15th, May 15th, September 15th, and January 15th again. That way we can reach out to you and talk through, what are you envisioning? Does it make sense that you apply with one application? What should your order of operations, as we keep saying, and I know, Sarah, we're going to get there, I promise. What should that look like? What else might you be applying for? What questions you might have? We fully acknowledge that there's a lot in this application process. There's a lot that's eligible to be funded. You might have questions. We might have questions that we can help clarify for you. If you can include in the letter of intent that general location services area, the intended population or populations, what are those program or housing components that you envision requesting of the table, right? The eligible uses. And if you think you're going to also be coming in for a development ask, that's really helpful to know. So again, we can make sure that we have the development specialist and the Office of Homeless Initiative staff together to coordinate with you. Okay. Okay. Now the application itself. So the application itself, so you will see Appendix 6. So this is where the 2 NOFAs are a little different too. There's a link in Neighborly to the application for the development side that Andrew mentioned. We do not have that on this side. Appendix 6 of the NOFA is the application itself. Okay. Appendix 6. We put it at the very end. So you've got all the background information at first, and then here we've got Appendix 6 for you. Everyone, no matter what you're applying for, needs to make sure you take a look at the attachments. These are not as exhaustive as the other one, but they're really helpful. There's ones that are helping us for your financial requirements, the grant agreement requirements. Getting these up front will actually help us move the agreement process, the grant agreement process through faster. So we really appreciate it if you can. include those attachments. And then there's a main context section that is, what's the name of your organization? Who's the point of contact? What's the basic proposal overview concept? What's the overall budget that you're at, or funding that you're asking for? It's just really that high level full vision. Because you might say, hey, our vision is to reduce, I'm just making this up, I'm not saying you need to do this. Our vision is to reduce unsheltered homelessness in our community. And to do that, we need to apply for street outreach, bridge housing, supportive housing, and we're also going to do some prevention, right? You might say you want all of those activities to have this comprehensive plan. So that's in that main context where you'll give us that big picture of what is this transformational project concept. Then you'll see the next sections, Roman numeral 3 onwards, is about which of those components are needed for that overall concept that you're requesting. Don't fill out the sections that you don't need. You might just apply for one. That is absolutely okay. You might apply to every single one. It might be a little trickier, but if you have a way to roll that into a single project concept and you think it fits, that's where you would potentially apply to all. Now, if you are wanting to come in, let's say you're a larger nonprofit or a larger municipality or county, and you're like, oh, we probably have 3 different projects. We're going to think of prevention differently than street outreach. Then you probably want to come in with 2 different applications, right? Because if they're totally separate programs, you're going to think of them differently, send them out differently. And this is where, again, that discussion with us, that consultation with your LOI will be really helpful, where we can help talk through that and work with you. We really want to set this up in a way that just makes it as easy for you as possible, but also enables us to be able to review consistently across different requests. I also want to highlight, I think this was a question in the, this is a question that was in the chat, that if you are looking to create supportive housing, develop new supportive housing, outside of this funding opportunity, we have historically had for almost a decade now, our annual request for application for the creation of supportive housing. We affectionately call that our PSH RFA. And Zach Schaffner will be doing the informational webinar tomorrow afternoon on that. What we recommend is that we did not want you to have to fill out 2 different applications. So instead of creating a section in this NOFA, you just fill out that RFA. Okay, and you would include that here and just say, hey, this is what we filled out. Same if you have a development request. You would fill out the transformational affordable housing NOFA process. We're not going to do it all here. We don't want you saying, which place do I go? Each of those things has one place that you're going to go to apply for. And again, when you send in your LOI, we'll walk through that with you because it gets nuanced by each project pretty quickly. This is hard to see potentially, but this is the screenshot of the scoring criteria that we will be using. This is how the requirements and the priorities actually translate into scoring for the applications. So what we will do is literally look at the app, and you will see in Appendix 6 in the application that we have questions that match to this. So you almost can score yourself, right? And you can kind of look at it. We tried to make it as direct line for you as possible so you can see that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go through these 2 examples because I know there are some questions about this, and then we are going to open it up for questions about the homelessness response, NOFA specifically, and then we can go, and then we have some FAQs, and then we can open it up. So this is one example that we anticipate getting. Sarah, I think this might answer one of yours, but please let me know if not, and for others. So typically, again, with the new supportive housing project, again, you're going to want to contact Zach Schaffner, myself, and then we will help connect with your housing development specialist, or if you know them, loop them in already, just so we can talk through the process. For example, if you are anticipating applying to the Colorado Housing Finance Authority or CHAFA for low-income housing tax credits, that will impact timing compared to if you're not. If you're applying for you envision needing our assistance for acquisition, you might apply through the Transformational Affordable Housing NOFA sooner than if you're coming in more on the gap side. So that's where this is just using an example of brand new. You're going to go through the RFA for the creation of supportive housing. That's where we give you the thumbs up that it's great PSH for the right population, or for the intended population that needs PSH, sorry, supportive housing, permanent supportive housing. That's where you also request project-based vouchers from us and or tenancy support services. Now, services by statute is available in 1304. Again, we're just having the one place. If you are doing new supportive housing, apply for the TSS through that RFA, the creation of supportive housing. We will incorporate that because, as you saw, it is technically part of the application components for this NOFA. So we're going to connect those dots. Don't worry about that. This is where those questions will be. Then again, if you're applying for the tax credits, that's a huge piece of the financing stack. So we need to see where that lands. And if not, then you might come into responding to either of these NOFAs simultaneously or in some sort of order. So this is just an example of that. I know this sounds really confusing and overwhelming. We will walk through this with you with your project. Now, another example would be, say you're coming in for non-congregate shelter. Again, you're looking to acquire, build something. Non-congregate sheltering is basically, there aren't a bunch of cots or dormitory style. It's more everybody has their separate space, and that's what makes it non-congregate. So you would, again, contact us, and then you probably would simply, because low-income housing tax credits are not applicable to shelter, so you probably would then come to us through the homelessness response and the transformational affordable housing NOFAs, depending again on what are the funding pieces you are envisioning you need. So you might apply to both of those at the same time. Or you might want to do them in a different order. Again, what we want to talk through with you is, what is that process looking like for you on securing the financing or the local approval process at the timing, and then we can work with you on what makes sense for the order of those operations. Okay, I think I'm going to pause there. We do have the FAQs, but what questions might we have for the homelessness response RFA?
We have a hand up from Lisa Pulaski.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So a couple things, and I apologize if this was already asked. I had to step out for a sec. Can we submit more than one application, or can a group come together and submit several applications together?
So you can, that was not asked exactly like that. So thank you for that, Lisa. So you will, what we are looking at is you'll submit by project. So if you have a project with multiple components, so looking here, let's say you have a project where you might have, I'm just going to do the top two, street outreach and shelter together, where you might be trying to engage people living unsheltered and create a sheltering space, particularly for them. Again, I'm just picking the top two there. Then you would just do one application, right, for that project concept. But let's say you also had 2 or 3 other different project concepts, like a supportive housing project. In addition to that, you probably would do those separate, because the funding is pretty separate. The project concept, the way you're going to be doing the financing for that, the budget management for that might look really different. And that's where we'd want to work with you on that. Can you repeat the other part of your question? Was it about multiple people coming in for an application?
Yeah. So I guess the bottom line is, if you're part of a collaboration, could you also submit a request as an applicant? And you know, so if you're sort of looking at housing solutions for the whole community,
Yeah.
and you team up on a few different projects, you know, would that preclude you from submitting your own? And are you hoping that organizations collaborate in that manner?
Okay, let's see if I can answer here. So you'll see here, I think it's, yes, we want to see collaboration. absolutely want to see collaboration, right? That folks are talking to each other. Now, whether you submit a single application or separate ones, and you just speak in each one to how they're related, either way will be okay. I can really appreciate that trying to get 3 different counties to get the county approval and submit a single application might be a little clunky, complicated. If you can do it, great, go for it. If you can't, that's okay. Just coordinate in your applications how you can show that you are coordinating with each other. Things for you. So it really depends. And I would say, Lisa, before you all get too deep into coordinating a single application, let's talk about maybe the specifics more offline so that I can help guide you with that. Because we don't want we want to have it be easy for you all and not overly complicated. And I can see pros and cons either way. Right.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Hey,
All right,
Kristen.
next, we have
Yes.
McKenna.
Sorry.
Hi.
Go ahead, Katie.
Thanks so much, and thanks for going over all of this really helpful information. My question was around the homelessness prevention, eviction prevention category. Wondering what the best approach is for those types of applications, particularly as much of the language seems related to homelessness resolution. So any guidance there, and then specifically the HMIS requirement and the associated 10 points on the scoring. How could we approach that with a homelessness prevention application?
Thanks for that, Katie. So I've brought up here, and I realize again, it's on the smaller side print, but you will see in there that we talk about what is it within eviction, and homelessness prevention that can be funded. And then if you look at the program comparisons document link, it'll show in there more of kind of what is around eviction prevention, homelessness prevention. I think when we talk about homelessness resolution, right, that's some of the language that we've gotten based on the statute, but really what we know is that we have to look at inflow as much as outflow for reducing homelessness in Colorado. So when we talk about homelessness resolution, it might not mean that somebody had to become homeless to resolve it for them. Think about how this can help resolve the challenges and the need of homelessness. Coloradans experiencing homelessness, and part of that might be that you have stopped the inflow piece of it. So I think that's what you would speak to. If I don't know if that helps answer your question, if I was getting there.
Yes, it definitely does. Thanks,
Okay.
Kristen.
Sure.
And then what about
HMIS?
Yep.
HMIS?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe we talk through that a little bit more. We really want to see everything going through HMIS. So I'd be curious where you might envision some challenges or what particular questions you might have. So maybe we could set up some time to talk through that and dig into that.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I guess just more specifically, if we're preventing homelessness, I think the goal would be is that they hadn't been in the HMIS system yet because they've been housed.
Yes, so they don't necessarily have to be in there as the way to identify them, right? It's how are we reporting on the number of folks served and the outcomes, right? So the benefit, how are we use it as a way to track the beneficiaries.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Oh, and Rand's just put in the chats, that could be a good data integration project of homelessness prevention. Rand, we might have to chat about that the next time we check in. So yeah, curious thoughts around that. You know, this is a significant portion of money, and we anticipate a significant portion of, or a significant number of grants. So where we can have consistency in reporting, but we also appreciate that you know, that there might be nuances to each program. So we'd love to talk through that with folks. All right, Adam, any others?
Yes, up next is Yvette Searden.
Sorry, that was an accident.
All right, next up we have Meg Ann Robinson.
Hi, when doing a permanent supportive housing project, and you're applying for funding to provide those services, my question is, how shovel ready does the construction of that building need to be?
So you're applying for new construction supportive housing?
So yes, I think we would be thinking about applying for supporting the services as well as the construction. So I guess the question is, at what point in that time frame when we're building our building, what point do we need to apply for the services support?
Great, thanks for that, Megan. So I'm going to go to this slide here where I would say, if you can, put in a plug for joining Zach's webinar tomorrow about the request for applications for the creation of supportive housing, because that's where you'll want to look at the application timeline and also nuances around applying for services for a new construction supportive housing project. So typically it goes, if you're thinking this example here that we have on the screen is what would probably be the order of the operations. And it's just getting nuanced again with the timing of when you're going to come into CHAFA, then which, if you are, let's just say, then when you would come in, which round for the supportive housing RFA.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. Maybe we have time for one more.
We have Sarah Bott.
I think I'm good. We're
Oh.
back to the slide that I was just trying to make sure it's crystal clear that if you're doing new PSH, you do it's the sort of the same as it's been in the past. Can you guys, is there a way to talk about how the traditional DOH funds fit into this? Or is that another slide?
No, that's a great question, Sarah. And you're right. When you're thinking about a new PSH build, it's going to be very similar to what you've been doing. And so we can talk through that. Let's set up time to to talk about your specific project. Andrew, do you want to speak to how so that's where the traditional project-based vouchers and services dollars for PSH come in is, yes, by incorporating that annual RFA. Andrew, do you want to speak to where the gap funding, more traditional or historical funds fit into this?
I think I'd rather take that question written and be able to provide a more, thought through written response in the FAQs.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
So we only have one more hand up from Sarah Rutledge, if you guys want to go for that. And Sarah Rutledge removed her hand and Sarah Botts is back up. And no one's hand is up now.
Great. I see in the chat, someone asked, because I've put in the plug for the creation of supportive housing RFA webinar a couple times now. Zach did put that in the chats. Again, that will be on our website for open RFAs and NOFAs as well once that recording is done tomorrow, should you not be able to join. All right. To keep things moving, we've created several frequently asked questions. I think some of these have been answered. Andrew, I've been yapping a lot. Do you want to take on highlighting some of these so they hear a fresh voice?
Certainly. We have talked about whether or not an applicant should submit one large application, encompassing 3 or 4 different projects. Say, they wanted to build 3 or 4 shelters or affordable housing complexes within a town. Should it just be one application? The answer is primarily no. We want the applications to be kind of project or program specific so that they think about, say, a construction of an apartment building can be reviewed and judged based on, feasibility and attainability, sustainability on its own merit, as we wouldn't want a grand idea of 4 projects to kind of torpedo an application where one might be super shovel ready and the 4th one a stretch. We wouldn't want that not to qualify. So we want to look at each individual project on its own merits. Having said that, and I think that somewhere a little further down here, there's not a limit of applications either, meaning that that same theoretical county I was just describing could put in 4 separate applications for those 4 separate construction projects, let's say. Let's see here. Reading through, I do, like the Q&A here that we're highlighting. A lot of these deal specific questions, that's what the LOI and the consultation process is there for, so that we can connect, we, the development staff, or our DOH staff can connect with you to talk through your specific project. What can count as match? Again, sources of leverage, aside from the grant program, include cash equity, other local government grant financing, bank or CDFI type financing, philanthropic donations, as well as some in-kind matches are eligible. Again, for-profit organizations are not eligible applicants under this program. Next slide, please. And then see here highlighting that we want to get applications for each discrete project or program, but more than one application that is acceptable. And as you can see here, we are planning to keep this FAQ page as a living document that we will have posted on our website next to the NOFAs, so that you can continue to check back and see that all of the questions we've been gathering in the chat, as well as what we may get in the future, will be asked and addressed on this document.
Thank you, Andrew. And so just a time check, we have about 20 minutes, and I think we have over 50, maybe over 60 different questions in the chat. We've been trying to keep track, thank you to the rest of the DOH team, on what we've been able to answer or not. But we do really want to open it up for what other questions you may or may not have that we can fill in here. And also then just want to, again, put in the plug for ways to stay informed as we do update FAQs or add any clarification or guidance based on your thoughtful, good questions. So please do keep these links close at hand.
And we will, under that latest applications link where you all have gone to see these 2 RFAs, we will put a 3rd link there to the FAQs. So I think David just asked that question. So this, in the next day or 2, will be where you'll go to see all of the questions that were asked today that are consolidated down into the FAQs.
All right, we've got Sarah Rutledge with the first question.
Hi, Sarah Rutledge, MDHI. Thank you guys for putting this on. This has been super helpful. So my question is, what is the grant term? I see that funds need to be allocated by the end of 2024 and spent by 2026. Does this mean that the grant term is 3 years?
So in referring to the homelessness response one, so
yes,
we envision that we will aim for 12-month grant periods that, based on what you request and we're able to award, we would envision it goes through to the 2026 deadline. I say that there might be, that's not a requirement. So it might be, because it's on the programmatic side, there might be something on the data side that is a shorter period, and it might not be annual renewal for that time period. So we will look at likely doing 12-month grant agreements. But that's something that we would work with you on, is what makes sense based on what your request is.
All right, up next, we've got Elise Maryland.
Thanks. Thanks again, you guys, for putting this on. My question is about timing of awards. I'm wondering if there's any like specific rules you're following about, are you expecting to give a majority of the awards in the first, round? And this is more for transformational affordable housing than it is for homelessness. Or are you expecting, it to really be rolling and kind of spread out awards a little more? Is there anything you can speak to in terms of that?
No to specifics, as we had 250 people on this webinar, which was awesome, which was a lot more than we had in the past. So that's just an example of what we think, unexpected demand. So I don't, we don't have any hard and fast governors on when and how quickly the awards will roll out, with the exception of $69 million of the available funds are indeed set aside for rural and rural resort designated locations for the first year. So, if there were to be all applications from urban designations, they would not be encompassing more than the $240 million. Now I'm being very hyperbolic, but if that were to happen, they could not all get awarded, because $69 million of the funds indeed must be set aside and are set aside for the rural and rural resort communities to access over the course of the first 12 months in terms of applications and awards. So that is the one hard and fast kind of filter or governor that we have on the program. We really do need to take a look at what the application volume and demand is. I saw another question as to how soon one might expect an award. Part of that depends on how many applications and the complexity, robustness of the applications, and therefore what the analysis and review time at DOH staff is in order to turn those around. So I think to be determined on that. But for those that are in the rural and rural resort communities, do understand that there is kind of absolutely a set aside for those communities, so that all the funds won't be soaked up just by urban communities if they overwhelmed the rural and rural resort areas with initial applications.
Got it. Thank you. And then I'm hoping to squeeze in just one other quick question that's just really a point of clarity. Can you confirm the first round is the first application that will be accepted for affordable housing is going to be January 1st?
Yep, for transformational affordable housing, LOI is due December 10th. And then that means that LOIs in by December 10th can apply on the January 1 date or thereafter. So yes, January 1st.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Kristen.
Hey, this is Kristen from the Salvation Army. I have a follow-up question to the match Q&A. What's been described in the match is very generous as far as all the sources. My question is about how are we proving our match and how stringent is it? Coming from the world of ESG, there are many times I think things should be able to count as a match, and it's not often the case. So I want to make sure that as we're looking at what we'll be using as a match truly does qualify as match.
So I'm going to step in first because Kristen Toombs will have the more complicated answer I think that you're looking for in coming out of that ESG world. But from the development side, the Transformational Affordable Grant Program, it is very much like a loan to value. The grant cannot exceed 75% of the project cost. So that other 25% for the development and construction must be sourced elsewhere, loans, cash, et cetera. Now, I think Kristen can answer this in terms of the homelessness response that you might be getting at a little bit more.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, good question, Kristen. So you will see we will have in the budget spreadsheet that you will submit with your transformational homelessness response request, that we include in there what is the match and then a narrative explaining what that match is. And so depending on what that is, we will want to see work with you on what is the source for showing that, how do you show, how will you show it? And so that is part of what we'll want to work with you on, wanting to be flexible. I know the intent for the funds coming from the bill 1377 was to try to be as flexible and creative around match as possible. That was the intent by the sponsor. So trying to honor that.
Great, thank you.
And happy, Kristen, happy to chat and we can talk through and see what that is and dig in where there might be things that were not eligible under the federal program of emergency solution grants and see if that would be eligible here. So happy to dig into that with you.
Oh, thank you, Kristen.
All right, up next we've got Amy Sexton.
Am I unmuted? Oh, yes. Okay. Hi there. Yeah, I was wondering if we were to receive an acquisition grant to purchase mobile home parks, which is my project, is there a restriction on using those funds indirectly, like to refinance a bridge loan?
That is a good question. I want, we'll put it in the FAQ to clarify, but, based on what we currently do at the Division of Housing, repayment of a bridge loan for acquisition is an eligible use.
Excellent.
All right, next we have M.A. Vera Ananda.
Hi, just a quick question about what kinds of things can be funded for the homelessness response part. We're looking to do some capital improvements to our daytime homeless shelter. Is that the kind of thing that could be funded?
So capital improvements would fall under the affordable housing because that would be, well, Andrew, I guess this is where I phone a friend on the development side. Do we consider capital improvements the same as renovations?
Correct. That would be, the same as a rehabilitation. So an eligible use, yes.
So that would be an eligible use under the affordable housing. Under the affordable housing grant program.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And we'd be happy to talk with you about, again, you'll want to, because that is related, obviously, on the homelessness response continuum, you'll want to speak to why that is transformational, right? Why those capital improvements are making a difference for resolving homelessness. So I think when you send in that LOI, we'll connect and make sure that the Office of Homeless Initiatives and your housing development specialists are connecting with you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Aaron Sizek next.
Yes, we are looking at doing some land banking up here for affordable housing. And I'm wondering if the land needs to be entitled for us to be eligible to get funding for it.
So in terms of an eligible use, no, our eligible uses don't, as written, don't get that into that much detail. But certainly that will be part of the review process. And a parcel that is not entitled that someone wants to acquire might be, might not score as high or might not hit as high a priority as another applicant who has a fully entitled parcel that they want to acquire.
Great, thank you.
Yep. So that goes to the feasibility. It is what you're trying to acquire and the ultimate build out of it feasible. And that's kind of in the art of the underwriting and review.
Right. If could we add some strength to it if we had letters of support from the county entitlement agencies?
If I were an applicant, that's absolutely what I would want to do. So certainly, I don't know, without seeing it in an individual application, how much strength is added or not added, but absolutely, that would be the right strategy. If I were in the applicant's shoes, on our side, we have to do those reviews and kind of make those value judgments.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right, up next we've got Sarah Rutledge.
Hi, me again. So if we submit our LOI a month before and then submit our application on January 15th, if we hear back that we did not make the cut, can we reapply after doing some tweaking?
So just to clarify, Sarah, so there's the January 1st.
No, I'm sorry, for the
And-
second part, for the services
Homeless-
and.
The homelessness response, that'll be February 15th.
Oh, yes.
We're just
Thank
keeping you
you.
all on your toes with these
Thank you.
dates. So that is an excellent question. Here, so I put this to give you the cheat sheet for the due dates here. I think the answer is yes, but let me just triple check from a procurement perspective if I'm not missing anything. And we will clarify that in the FAQ.
Great, thank you.
Sure. I think part of it, Sarah, like where I'm going is if you miss the threshold requirements and so it just doesn't even have a chance to be reviewed and you come back in, that might be a little different than if you met the requirements to be reviewed and don't score. Right? Or if what you requested is not considered eligible. So I just need to go through the different reasons why you might not get awarded and just double check. There might be nuances with those. So I'll get that clarified for you. Great question.
Thanks.
All right, up next, we've got Mike Sandgren.
Yeah, thank you. Just a pointed question on the 25% match. Can ARPA dollars that are coming from a different source than these grant programs be used as part of that match?
So a local, Mike, you're thinking like if you've got county or municipal ARPA funds, for example.
Exactly.
Yes. From the homeless response perspective, yes. Andrew, same,
Yep.
right?
Same. Yes, eligible.
Great, thank you.
I think we
And
have time for one or two more, Adam.
yep, I think all we've got left is Katie McKenna.
Hi, thanks so much. I had a question potentially more specific to CDFIs, but with the idea of blending grant capital with the loan capital that will be made available through the other transformational program coming later. Should an application be submitted through this grant program and then a later application submitted through the loan program? And then relatedly, do you have an estimate or guesstimate on the timeline of when that loan program will be released?
So the revolving loan fund program that was inspired by Senate Bill or is Senate Bill 22-159 is the next one to be worked on and rolled out. So I don't want to say imminently as in next week, but it is next up on the block. And we have started to put together that framework internally. So that is coming soon. Certainly, either of those are eligible activities. So an organization could apply for both. In terms of what the organization should or shouldn't do and its best strategy, I think that's more of a deal level conversation that we'd be happy to have with the potential applicant.
Great, thanks so much, Andrew.
That's all we have for raised hands.
Okay.
Perfect. I think that's perfect timing. So I'm going to scroll down to the very end again to just share how to stay in touch with us. And again, here are our email addresses. Hopefully most of you have them, but please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We will do our best. If you have reached out and we have not responded, it's just because we're swamped, but we absolutely want to be responsive. So don't hesitate to ping us again if you need. We want to be here for you. As you've heard Allison George, our director, say many times, it's all about partnership. Partnership with you all. We look to be here to support the great work you're doing to bring affordable housing to Colorado and make sure everybody has a safe place to call home. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much for all of these questions. We are actively tracking them. Thank you to Chelsea, Adam, Zach, and whomever else for tracking all of these. We will get answers to these and post in the next few days on our website. And in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out. We really don't want to overwhelm you. We know that it's the holiday time and it has been a rough 3 years with the pandemic. So hang in there, reach out to us with questions. We appreciate you and are very excited to see the transformational work that comes from partnering together.
Yes, thank you.